Annelise, Joe Biden says the last thing Russia wants is another Cold War.
No, and there was clear optimism from both leaders after this press conference, but it didn't take long for in each press conference after the summit for each leader to start honing in on the differences that did arise during this summit. Now, it was only a few hours shorter than was expected, and one of the really unusual aspects of this particular summit is that both leaders had their own press conferences, one after the other, so there wasn't that opportunity for them to correct anyone on stage, counter what was being said, but at least it did seem like tensions hadn't risen on any of the key issues following the summit, in particular Joe Biden saying that there wasn't any kind of appetite for increasing tensions between the countries.
The tone of the entire meetings, I guess it was a total of 4 hours, was good, positive. There wasn't any strident action taken.
Of course, it didn't take long for those differences to arise either. One of the key issues has been the US calling out Russia on cyber attacks. What we've seen from Russia is a response saying that they don't think that they're engaging in cyber attacks. And indeed, President Putin said he thinks it's America and South American countries launching cyber attacks on Russia. The president said in that meeting, President Biden, I should say, that he listed out 16 different pieces of key critical infrastructure that both countries should agree should be off the table if there is any kind of cyber warfare. It didn't seem like that was something necessarily agreed to by President Putin, but there was also this discussion around human rights. And this is where President Putin has been saying this line again and again in his 40 minutes speaking to reporters afterwards. He continually circled back to the January 6th insurrection and the charges that are facing hundreds of people for that, for the actions that they took that day. They've said that that's the same as Russia going after its own political dissidents.
That's a ridiculous comparison. It's one thing for literally criminals to break through cordon, go into the Capitol, kill a police officer, and be held unaccountable. And it is for people objecting and marching on the Capitol and saying, you are not allowing me to speak freely. You are not allowing me to do A, B, C, or D. And so they're very different criteria.
Joe Biden also said he raised the issue of two different Americans who are being held by the Russians and also the fate of the Russian opposition leader Navalny. In that, he said that he wants to make sure that nothing bad comes of his position. He doesn't want to see him befall a bad fate. And it's there that Putin was not actually committing to nothing bad happening to Navalny.
A citizen that you have mentioned, first, this person knew full well that he violates the law that exists in Russia, and he had to understand that he is a person that is a repeated offender. He ignored the requirement of the law, and he knew full well that he is wanted. Nevertheless, he came back to Russia, and he deliberately wanted to be arrested.
Joe Biden did seem quite stressed during his press conference, at one point taking off his jacket because he was standing under the sun and got quite hot. He was only taking questions from reporters for about 20 minutes, much less than President Putin. And in that, he did seem to, at one point, trip up and accidentally refer to President Putin as President Trump.
I caught part of President Putin's press conference.
It's been a long week for President Biden. He's wrapped up his trip now after attending the G7 summit and also meeting with NATO leaders. He's on his way back to the United States, and it's here he's trying to negotiate probably his most important bit of legislation that he came into office to try and enact, and that's the infrastructure package. So he's certainly got his plate full.